Clash Royale has 5 different card rarities so far. For common, rare, epic and legendaries, they all act the same. You drag the card and just watch it do stuff. Champions, however, are the unique ones here as they come with an ability button that you can activate when you see fit. And they are also the only card rarity that is limited to 1 per deck. The intro for this video was written almost a year ago, so it's 2 per deck now. Also, heroes allowed any rarity to have an ability button, so I sound like a clown. Thanks Supercell. However, because of heroes, I don't see them releasing any new champions, so it's the perfect time to explain every champion in Clash Royale. But before that, I want to briefly explain the champion mechanic itself, which also applies to heroes. When you deploy a champion or a hero, you would get a crown icon on its level indicator. That crown icon is useful in showing which champion would activate the ability once you press that button, and it always goes on the most recently played champion, so it's easy to track for both players. What's funny is that if an ability is on cooldown and you place a new champion, you would get the ability instantly. This allows Mirror to give you double abilities, which could be worth it in some niche situations that are not pushing a giant skeleton twice with Little Prince, but I could not think of a situation honestly. Now let's start with Golden Knight, a 4 elixir champion released October 2021. Without his ability, he is arguably the worst 4 elixir card in the game. Like, I'm not even joking, a knight is better in every way and costs 1 less elixir. But with his ability, I don't want to say he's broken, but he low-key feels like it against certain decks. His ability is 1 elixir, so it's worth using more often than not. Clearing any number of swarms with him is usually good because it's cheaper than every single small spell. You can also use it offensively to make him run faster in case the opponent was low on elixir, and it allows him to push extremely heavy things like Golem, Electro Giant, and your mom. What's cool is that this doesn't stop at just being good against Swarm. This dash makes him invincible for a bit so it can cancel a Sparky Shot. It can also absorb a charging attack of both princes, which is definitely worth the 1 elixir. And what's even more crazy is that it can cancel out any attack with good timing. It's irrelevant with P.E.K.K.A, but as you can see here against the mini P.E.K.K.A, I saved a lot of HP on my Golden Knight by avoiding the second mini P.E.K.K.A hit. A lot of people claim that Golden Knight's dash is unfair because of how inconsistent it is, but that's just them not knowing how it works. Let's take a look at how the Golden Knight dash interacts with Rascals, and then take a look at Electro Spirit. Seems inconsistent, but it isn't. Let me explain. When an Electro Spirit connects, it starts looking for its next target in a certain radius around itself, roughly like this. In Golden Knight's case, as you can see, there is a long distance between him and the Rascal Boy when he hits him with a dash, and the circle will form around himself, so that's why it can't detect the Rascal Girls when the Electro Spirit could. Now this unpredictability, along with a few other reasons, makes him a semi-win condition because you can find yourself getting random tower connections. And his dash running speed makes him great at punishing people when they are low on elixir, which is perfect for the bridge spam playstyle. And what's even more cool is that his dash is programmed to stop once it hits a tower, giving him a better chance at dealing damage to the enemy tower, and it also prevents him from activating the King Tower like an Electro Spirit does. You could technically use that to your advantage by hiding your troops behind the towers, but if he connects to a tower, you likely lost the game. Next we got Archer Queen, a 5 elixir champion released October 2021. Queen is basically a weaker musketeer that has more HP, allowing her to survive certain spell combos. But unlike the musketeer, she doesn't need babysitting whenever she is deployed, as she can hold her own ground because of her ability. What do I mean by babysitting? Some cards are weak when played alone, like for example an Executioner on his own is likely useless on defense, whereas something like Electro Wizard can do well alone compared to other ranged cards with similar stats. The Queen's ability allows her to win most 1v1s without further support from other troops in your deck, and that even expands to 1v1s on the opponent's side, given that not only she goes invisible and becomes untargetable, but she also gains an attack speed boost that would melt most cards in seconds. Taking those traits into account, with the 1 elixir cost, this ability is a free positive elixir trait generator. While invisible though, she loses some of her movement speed, likely to make a 1 HP Queen ability on the bridge less effective. Since the Queen has more HP than most ranged cards, her main weaknesses are Rocket and Lightning. Now you typically have 2 options, which is either feeding the opponent tower damage with your ranged card or spacing it out, which is very easy against Rocket, given how low its range is. But against lightning, you'd have to play your stuff in a very stupid position, which makes them very snipeable. What's cool about Queen though is that the invisibility makes it safe to play it on the river in awkward positions. Next we got Skeleton King, a 4 elixir champion released October 2021. Unlike Queen and Golden Knight, this dude is designed in a way that makes him decently worth the elixir without his ability. Like, compare him to Dark Prince, he deals less damage, but the guy has more HP that it low-key justifies the lower DPS. Regarding his ability, it's a 2 elixir graveyard. Now this sounds broken on paper, but let me tell you why it isn't. Here's the deal. I'll play a graveyard against a skeleton army in a vacuum just to show how they are basically the same despite the huge difference in elixir cost. The only reason a graveyard is worth 5 elixir is because it spawns on towers, obviously. For the Skeleton King, his ability spawns around him, so saying it's a graveyard is a bit disingenuous. Also, his skeletons have 1 HP instead of 81, so they die in 1 tick to stuff like Goblin Curse and Void. Like, even if he gets on tower, the position of his graveyard is kinda bad because it has a lot of the skeletons spawning pretty far away. There is a reason you don't see graveyard players playing it this way. It's just much less efficient. Now, to justify a 2 elixir skeleton army that is more spread out and stronger against splash, they made an ability meter. If you notice, dropping the Skeleton King and immediately pressing the ability gives you a minuscule amount of skeletons, but keeping him alive on the board will show a bar above his head that keeps on filling. This bar fills up whenever a troop dies, whether it's a friendly troop or an enemy troop, and the more filled up it gets, the more skeletons that spawn from said ability, which means that he isn't a good bridge spam card since the opponent wouldn't have to worry about his ability. However, this isn't as bad as it sounds because he already is a great defensive unit, so using him defensively into a counter push fits well with his design. Now, usually this card gets played in graveyard decks or heavier beatdown decks because it can do good in a split lane push, but bait decks can pick it up as their mini tank because it serves as both a mini tank and a way to bait spells. Next we got Mighty Miner, a 4 elixir champion released April 2022. Now this dude is mighty simple compared to the previous heroes. He basically is a walking Inferno Dragon. The difference between him and the Inferno Dragon, aside from the flying, is that he doesn't get pushed back, so it's slightly harder to reset him. The main complex part about him is the ability, but even that is mighty simple. He drops a bomb that deals near identical damage to arrows, so not much interactions need to be memorized, and it mirrors his position on the arena, which is a simple concept to grasp unless you failed 3rd grade. This position switching mechanic makes him the safest card to drop in the back. Here's the real deal. Imagine you drop a Valkyrie and they drop a P.E.K.K.A. This basically means they got a 3 elixir P.E.K.K.A. because you fed them 4 elixir. But if it was a Mighty Miner for 1 elixir, you can run away from whatever it is that you lose to while dealing decent damage to them. Besides making him safe to drop in the back, it also makes him great to spam at the bridge when they are low on elixir, because you can just boom and switch to the other tower. This is even effective against non-swarm cards because the bomb will make it easier to finish off whatever mid-priced card they drop. Whatever card they play on 0, you can just switch lanes and get a free tower. Oh, I forgot to tell you why this doesn't work when opponent isn't low on elixir. Basically, if they kite him towards the middle, the ability won't really change much here. And one last mighty trick. I'm sorry, I'm gonna stop saying that. If you have the pocket open, you can simply play him as far from the middle as possible so that switching positions will have him spawn on towers directly. Next we got Monk, a 5 elixir champion released October 2022. Yes, this is where he originally started. He isn't a character from Clash Royale. Now, Monk is likely one of the most unique characters in the game because he has 2 different regular attacks. The way it works is it goes 1, 2, and then the 3rd one is a special attack with more damage and a pushback. That pushback makes him a very reliable tank killer despite his lower DPS compared to options like Mini P.E.K.K.A. because it works on every card. It also makes positioning him more important because if you mess it up, the pushback might literally help your opponent. And if the pushback isn't unique enough, his ability reflects projectile, kinda like an Uno reverse card. Now, what counts as a projectile? Some things like minions and Mega Minion still count even though they look like they are scratching. But if you zoom in here, there's a small black orb which is technically a projectile. And in certain situations, he doesn't even need to be the one getting targeted to deflect the projectiles. The most common application of this is against Expo, and it pisses off the Expo players so much more than you would imagine. Now, is this ability useless against melee cards? No, because it gives him a shield that reduces the damage taken. Obviously, two unique mechanics aren't enough to make him special, so his ability had to be the only thing that can counter spells. Before you scream broken, keep in mind there is a second of delay when you deploy him, and a second of delay for the deploy timer, and another second of delay for the ability, so reacting to spells is impossible. And if you already activated the ability, I don't think your opponent is stupid enough to spell your monk. I'm not saying monk reflecting spells doesn't happen, but it isn't as common as it may seem. And not every spell works on him, only projectile based ones do. Since countering spells isn't the most reliable, the main use for Monk is to counter ranged cards and buildings by leading your push and reflecting all of their stuff back at them. But you need to watch out because they might try to pull it out of the cannon's range, so don't activate it too early. And don't activate too late because it might give them a free King Tower activation. If you are sure they have no cards in their hand to activate their King Tower, you could press the ability since it gives you free tower damage. Although keep in mind, select projectiles have crown tower damage reduction to ensure the game stays balanced. Next we got Little Prince, a 3 elixir champion released November 2023. Little Prince is... that's not... Who let this false actor in? Where's the director? Someone is getting fired today. Now it might seem from looking at him that he just acts like an Inferno Dragon, but instead of damage increase, it's attack speed increase. However, the main difference here is that he basically doesn't reset when switching targets, so he deals better with multiple units. You can still reset him by disrupting his attack, by pushing him back or zapping him, and he would lose his charge once there are no targets in his sight range, which is pretty similar to Inferno cards. Now, part of the problem with Little Prince is that he needs support to do something, which is fair, he's squishy after all. But what's cool is that his ability can spawn a Guardian at any moment, so you can spawn a tank to support him even if your hand is weird. That Guardian ability costs 3 elixir and is very comparable to Knight in her stats, which means she also has good stats for the cost. To compensate for the lower stats, the ability comes with a swing that deals damage and pushes things away. What's unique about it is that it can push everything including a golem. Compared to other cards, for 3 elixir he is quite spell resistant, so his main use is being a safe DPS output in cycle decks. Now one thing to note is that if you use the ability on defense, you likely can't use it on offense because the cooldown is 30 whole seconds. But if you manage to defend without using it, then you can play the guessing game with your opponent as the Guardian Dash can eliminate some common counters. Next we got Goblinstein, a 5 elixir champion released October 2024. Little unknown fact, the official name for the monster is Brain Rot, and you'd never guess what his first word was. This is the only champion that spawns multiple units, and for that, it's a bit more complicated than the rest. Here's the deal. If the small doctor dies, you lose your ability button, but if the big monster is the one that dies first, then you can keep your ability button. Now, you might have noticed this weird metal thing that dropped from the monster. This is related to the ability because it shoots electricity between the scientist and the monster. So when he dies, he just drops the antenna on the ground and your electricity will go towards it. If you look at the formation of his deploy, you will notice that they aren't perfectly lined up and would flip in a weird way when going back and forth between the middle of the arena. The reason it's this way is to allow splitting them, which opens up a very cool diagonal ability play if you wanted to. Also, do keep in mind that if you want to place them in the back, make sure to not use the most far away tile, because if you do, your doctor will be screwed up by splash damage. Since the ability has no max range, that means the more far away the monster is from your scientist, the more area it covers. That makes him great in pushing while defending if they throw something stupid like a naked Ram Rider, because the scientist attacks troops while the monster ignores them. But you don't always have to counter push off of him. The card is brutal on defense, so make sure to take full advantage of that. And offensively, aside from forcing quick response because the ability deals a lot of damage on towers, you can also eliminate a huge counter push after overcommitting with a graveyard or a balloon if you protected your scientist properly because the ability deals near lightning damage to every troop coming your way for just 2 elixir. Finally, we got Boss Bandit, a 6 elixir champion released April 2025. This is a very simple one. It's like a bandit but bigger. Despite that, struggling against her, from what I've seen, seems to be a universal experience regardless of your skill level. And this is because of her ability that makes her teleport back. Now this ability feels simple, but it has some very complicated tricks and applications. First of all, teleporting back would give you a second dash on enemy troops, which is basically an increase in DPS. Besides that, dashing makes her invincible, so if you chain multiple dashes using teleports, you can avoid some ranged damage.
Oh, I almost forgot shadow dashing. Wait, let me turn the lights on for like a second here. Yeah, this is a trick I discovered when I was testing the card in the dev build, which basically allows the Boss Bandit to do teleport animations while dashing and skip the teleport cooldown. Here's the difference between teleporting normally and doing the animation skip by using the shadow dash technique, and this is pretty much effective against melee and ranged troops alike.
When they try to counter your Boss Bandit, teleporting behind would get her out of their tower range, making it more likely for her to win the 1v1. Honestly, even if they get her too deep, if you have a tank on your side, the ability would make the tower retarget onto it. It can also be used to cancel out things like Inferno Dragon attacks or cancel out kiting entirely if timed correctly, and even waste some of these swarm troops if they split them in the middle. Not enough uses? How about we completely prevent King Tower activations with it and even dodge rockets? This reminds me of that one tweet I made when Boss Bandit was new. Anyway, the card offers an insane amount of pressure when played on the bridge, so it's a bridge spam card. I feel like it's one of the best cards at punishing low elixir opponents, as long as you can deal with cheap distractions. I get a lot of requests on my channel to post gameplay videos, and now because I don't wanna flood the channel with daily gameplay videos and wanna keep the high quality stuff, I made a second channel called Abdod 2. You can check it out if you are interested in gameplay, tier lists and stuff like, basically casual videos, my dudes.